Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Patrons video today they're making for Arsi as part of their custom monthly music review. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves a track on the screen by an act named Rage Against the Machine. This is titled Wake Up, so we're going to listen through this track from start till finish and we're going to hear what we think. We've also got lyrics for this, so let's go, let's do it. It's great that the balance here with the different guitars, that drum beat, chord note groove moving forward. Savage. Just before we get into the main riff, and I apologize for pausing, I'll try not to do it too much, just to love the way the cymbals are panned in the stereo field, the different cymbals on the drum kit, the attention to detail with Morello's guitars is fantastic, man. Really great track. Yep, great tension there with the octave chords and vocals. Okay, so I think we're commenting on some political stuff. You know, nothing wrong with that in music. It's good to have an opinion on stuff, even if you know it's gonna it's gonna piss some people off. But I think the guy's a really adept storyteller. You know, clearly upset and frustrated about things that are going on in the world. Has the guts and courage to talk about in a way that is eloquent, even if it is still nonetheless aggressive and in your face. It's part of the genre. Back to that signature riff. Great, very engaging, you know, great use of the first 2 minutes. And talking about Malcolm X as well, you know, tried to blame it on Islam, he turned the power to the have-nots and then came the shot. Damn, flipping it around, suddenly things get really dark. Now, despite the kind of the quirkiness of the guitar tone, it's still really beautiful in its melody. An interesting way of solo guitar, breaking the vocals. Great use of sound design here. phenomenal dynamic range.
I think I heard a shot. I think I heard a shot.
I mean, we've had such range within this 4.5 minutes. It feels like we've had like several different songs within it. He's just screaming. The power there, right? The power of those vocals and just screaming into the mic. That build-up of the context talking about the neutralizing potential troublemakers and all that kind of stuff after what he spoke about, like Malcolm X and stuff like that, and Martin Luther King. And hell of a twisted guitar solo though, isn't it? It's the machine festering.
What you saw.
How are you? That's fantastic. Thank you to Arsi for this. It's been a while since I listened to this track outside of just an actual focused listen. I'm really glad that I've had the opportunity to do so. Because this is the conclusion of my review of this track by Rage Against the Machine titled Wake Up. It's the 20th anniversary special edition mix of the XX album. What a track. You know, when I hear this, clearly the song is talking about the people who tried to work against the machine, you know, Rage Against the Machine, the society, the infrastructure that, you know, the States has, for example. I think that we're discussing the States here and their political system, but also how they silence critics and how you can only talk about the right, wrong things, if that makes sense. But if you step in to like something else like Vietnam, where obviously it was very contentious at the time, you could wait up with a bullet in your head. And I think that's tremendously brave to write music about. It was a really compelling story told by the vocalist of Rage Against the Machine. I am pleased that they were as passionate as they were about it. Because it wasn't just the story that was being told and everything like that, which shows a clear understanding of the history, as well as some really dignified way of kind of letting the listener know that they need to wake up. They didn't just shout at the listener immediately. They gave all this extra context, and then they're just frustrated with trying to explain it, just screaming at you to wake up and figure out what's actually going on and the truth behind it. But just the vocals were tremendous. I think that he's a sensational singer. It's the rapping in the verse parts was great. The two stanzas we had there. And then obviously the screened parts of the vocal fry were fantastic. And there wasn't like a real catchy kind of melody or anything like that for the hook line of the choruses. It's more just like, it's feral force. It's vicious. It's unrelenting. And that's kind of what I think the message of the song was meant to be about, is to try and jot the listener out of their haze and kind of get them to concentrate and pay attention. And I think that they managed to do that with this performance. It's a very believable performance. You can tell that it's well polished and practiced, and they're experienced as a frontman, and I'm stoked to have heard more of it, for sure. I think that in addition to this, just the situation we had outside of the story and the vocals, with the track at 6 minutes, it was great. It was a great use of time, you know. We had a lot of storytelling going on, lots of different guitar riffs and little bass lines there, and the drums had a lot of range to their beats as well. I think that, you know, if we break those apart individually, like the track had verse sections and instrumental parts, and then like it had an interlude, and then it had like a spoken kind of like melee kind of thing, and then it had a breakdown, and then several different solo sections with some really twisted sounds on the guitars. Like Tom Morello is very adept at creating some really kind of unique tones on his lead parts there. Very comfortable with his effects change and everything like that. You got some interesting harmonic kind of octave shifts there, almost sounding completely digitally corrupted, which makes sense with the machine being broken, the one that we're talking about within this track. I think in addition to that, you know, we just the when we weren't doing those lead lines, the power chords, da 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 da. It was less of making the vocals catchy and more about making the guitar riffs memorable, and the accompaniment forcing the listener forward was giving them something to mosh to. It was the power chords with the bass lines they followed, how tight the rhythm guitars and the bass lines were was wonderful, but also how atmospheric the guitar lines were when they aren't trying to sort of be the dedicated rhythm section, just as more like kind of like little atmospheric kind of jitters and jolts and little kind of slides or little bits of artifacting throughout the stereo field. It's wonderful, you know. The guitar was not only artistic, but it was also a force to carry the song forward, and I'm really appreciative of the fact that I got to appreciate it on its own as a focus listen, you know. The bass lines were nice and tight with the drums and the guitar, rhythm guitars, but also, you know, knew to kind of like step down a little bit when things got a bit quieter and then pick back up with the intensity and the force of that with the distortion as when they needed to. And I think that there was a nice exploration of the fretboard while staying close to the root notes, but it was also just like the tone of the instruments themselves. Like there was a distortion on that bass which made it raucous and very kind of like fascinating to listen to, and I think that was well done. I think in addition to that, just the drum lines with the various kind of 8th and 16th note grooves there, as well as the various little tom articulations later on, but just knowing also to go for the kick snares and crashes and just kind of slam it out was fantastic. We had such an awareness of how to remain tight with the rest of the instruments within the mix without overstaying our welcome as a percussionist, and we pocketed when we needed to, but we also knew when to kind of rise up and really kind of kick the shit out of the eardrums. And the songwriting was on point here. This is a phenomenal album, and it's a really great song, and I don't think there's a single instrumental weak point within this. The motif overall is basically one which makes me think of just someone who's just so tired of explaining the same old truths to someone else. You know, this is outside of my beliefs on what they're talking about, of course, but like, I know the kind of person who's been patient for a while and they're just sick of it. That wake up part was a climax throughout the track that just continued forward, and it was a wonderful use of that tension established early on to kind of be more proactive later on. And I suppose the theme itself is aggression, it's turmoil, it's frustration, but it's also trying to let this be the last stand before people finally just get their shit together and realize what's really at stake. I think that the sound of those different musical ideas made sense with the performance, with the vocals and the story, and things were very well connected. I mean, finally we have ourselves a studio recording, mixing and mastering, and I think that the vocals, guitar, bass, drums sounded great. I think that the way things were filled and EQ'd in the mix was good as well. The way the things were sort of like placed around the stereo field was great. You know, we had little things in and around the place there, just kind of allowing you to kind of appreciate all the depth to the left and right of the cans, and things were nicely placed in the frequency spectrum as well. There weren't any weird resonances anywhere. Things were really well handled. It was nice to have space there. It was nice to not just have the bass in the center the whole time. At one point, the bass was on one side, the guitar was on the other, and they were competing with each other for attention. I like the fact that the cymbals went back between each other, so you had the fuller sounding crashes with the more staccatoed kind of cymbal hits. You know, we had dynamic range. This things came down really well in like the interlude section where we talked about the neutralizing the person and planning things in advance and that kind of situation there, and things just went right back up in regards to dynamic range, bashing the ceiling in with the wake up part. it's just like outside of the dynamic range, things were just really well leveled in the mix. And it was nice and loud without pumping, so limiting compression was handled. And I mean, basically, this is my review, basically Patreon review of Rage Against the Machine's track Wake Up, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show us some love via the various social medias and the Spotify page. And stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you guys in the next CC Patrons review. Spiderhands out.